Hello everyone and welcome back to another Star Wars figure review. Next up for you today I'm going to give you a look at three items which are very, how should we say, Mandalorian themed. So, you know, some very cool reviews coming up. The first item that I'm going to give you a look at is a mail-away figure from the Vintage Collection. So it's not a part of any particular wave or series of figures. What you had to do to obtain this figure was collect UPCs or proof of purchases from your Star Wars action figure packaging. Collect, I think it was about 6 of them, and put in a total of $6.99, and you know, put in the redemption certificate as well that was available with certain figures, and send away for it. And a few months later, you'd get this figure. And the one that I want to give you a look at today is this guy. Obviously it doesn't look too appealing at first glance, but this is of course the rocket firing Boba Fett figure. There's a ton of history behind this figure and I'm going to get onto it in a moment. But first up, of course, we are going to take a look at this awesome figure. Now I don't actually have one out of the packaging to show you for two reasons. One of them being obviously this is an exclusive and very sought after figure, so I'm not really keen on the idea of opening it and taking it out of the packaging. And also the second point is the fact that, you know, this figure in particular is a reproduction of an original 1980s vintage figure. So the sculpt and the detail and, you know, just the overall look of the figure doesn't really fit in with the rest of my collection. So I've just opted to keep this one in its packaging for now. But there is the figure. We'll be getting a decent look at him. Looks very cool inside the packaging. Now the first thing you will be thinking is, what is the difference between this figure and the existing modern day vintage Boba Fett figure? Well, I've got one to show you by comparison. Obviously the cards are slightly different. The mail-away rocket firing Boba Fett has the generic Star Wars logo at the top of the card, whereas the modern day Boba Fett has the Empire Strikes Back. And also obviously the modern day Boba Fett from Wave 1 of the Vintage Collection has the mail-away Boba Fett sticker on the front, whereas the mail-away, well, is the mail-away, so it doesn't have that sticker, but it has a small bit of information about Boba Fett himself. So if you want to read that, feel free to pause the video. The backs of the packaging are slightly different as well. Obviously, the figures that are pictured are slightly different, you know, the original releases, and also the Vintage Collection description at the side is different as well. The rocket firing mail-away Boba Fett has a completely unique description on the back, so I will quickly read to you from that. He's here at last. After 30 years, the Boba Fett figure with the rocket firing backpack has reached this galaxy. The story of this mail-away figure is well known among Star Wars fans, and we're here to deliver the goods. This figure is a recreation of the original Boba Fett figure with the addition of that all-important rocket firing feature. Good things really do come to those who wait, and the wait is officially over. Enjoy. Okay, so the story with this figure is that basically in 1979, I believe, just prior to the release of The Empire Strikes Back, Hasbro, or Kenner at the time, ran a promotion where you did the same thing as you would with this guy. You know, you'd mail away for this figure, and Kenner were heavily advertising it as a rocket firing Boba Fett figure, so obviously the backpack would fire a missile. During that same year, prior to this figure's release, I believe there was an issue with the G.I. Joe figure or something like that, where a child was either blinded or choked on a firing missile. So Kenner decided to, you know, basically scrap the rocket firing feature for health and safety reasons, and the rocket firing Boba Fett figure never saw the light of day, as this figure arrived on people's doorsteps with the rocket firing missile glued into the backpack. Obviously health and safety rules have changed over the years, and Hasbro have been able to give us the figure that we wanted 30 years ago. So obviously this is really nostalgic for those older fans, and definitely one that they're going to want to get their hands on. As the card back says, this has been 30 years in the making. Just to give you an idea really of how far sculpting and detailing has come in the past 30 years, I'll give you a comparison of the two Boba Fett. Obviously this one is the vintage mail-away, and this is the vintage modern. So as you can see, all the paint applications and the sculpting are far superior today. but the figure still does look very cool, and once again serves as great nostalgia. In terms of articulation, obviously it wasn't what it is today back in the 1970s and 1980s, so this guy has the simple 4 points of articulation. He has a swivel neck, swivel shoulders and swivel hips. Obviously there were no ball joints or anything like that back then, or if there were, Star Wars figures certainly didn't have them. As you can see, very different to what we get on shelves today. Obviously you've got the rocket firing missile slotted down the back of the packaging there, and he also comes with a vintage style blaster as well. So very cool. This is definitely one of the most retro looking vintage figures that I have in my collection. Very impressed with this one, and definitely recommend picking one up if you can. Here in the UK this is only available on the Toys R Us website. Obviously in the US and Canada I believe you had to mail away for it, so it's pretty hard to come by. And if you haven't mailed off for one of these, then unfortunately you are too late, as the expiration date for this mail away figure was the 31st of March 2011. So, but there we go, that is the mail away Boba Fett vintage figure. Obviously the white box that I showed you at the beginning of the review is the mail away box that this figure does arrive in. So very cool. Definitely recommend picking one of these up if you can. Nowadays I'd suppose your best bet is eBay, and be prepared to pay a premium amount for this guy, especially in the UK, because obviously with Toys R Us being the only way of getting this guy, a lot of fans are going gaga for it, so definitely pick one up if you get the chance. So there we go, that is the vintage mail away Boba Fett with the rocket firing feature. One more close up of the figure. I hope you've enjoyed having a look at this guy, and I'll be back with another figure review next. As I said, my next couple of reviews are going to be very Mandalorian themed, and my next review is going to be on another exclusive figure, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, until next time, keep collecting, and may the Force be with you.